Hello and welcome to Kinboshi Radio, where we have completed the 2024 Honbashu. Kyushu is in the books, and Nick, we have a great relief in the world of sumo, for Kotozakura has finally won a Yusho.
Oh man, the race leading up to the day, it was just so nerve-wracking for me because I'm like, I just need him to get just one Yusho.
I know. And so, I mean, let's talk about both those things, but I'm going to start with Kotozakura, right? So, like, just getting one. This guy has, he came extremely close earlier this year, but lost to Teru at the very end when we had sort of an all basho race. This time it actually got done, but walk me through some of that sort of anxiety from you about why just one? What are you looking for from Kotozakura?
Well, truthfully, I think between him and Hoshoryu, I'm looking for, my personal preference is that Kotozakura would be the next promotion. But obviously he needs that Yusho, which Hoshoryu has, and Kotozakura, it's really just the one thing we were kind of missing for him, even if he doesn't get a promotion, as like the head Ozeki kind of looking at him, is he still was missing that really critical piece. That's
a great point, and I think that I feel that anxiety, and you can sort of see that anxiety in the English-speaking sumo fandom world, this idea that, like, it's not true, because people, like, think of Takayasu. People have gotten promoted to Ozeki without a Yusho before. You don't need that. Technically, a Jun Yusho or equivalent performance, right? That's enough. But that's kind of that thing where, like, why is Kotozakura here? He's never won a Yusho. Is he ever going to get a Yusho? He keeps finishing runner-up. Is he just not clutch? Is there something wrong? And I got caught up in the internet doom spiral after the double 8 and 7s from the two of them, and got sort of suckered into this feeling that, oh, maybe he just can't do it. And now immediately putting that to bed. So at least from my perspective, that's kind of how I feel this went in a positive way, like him finally getting the monkey off his back, the traditional sports storyline that you get from that angle. What about as far as, like, Ozeki credentials? Does this change how you feel about him as an Ozeki?
I don't know that it necessarily changes how I personally feel about it, but I do think it validates the slot. When Hoshoryu had one, Onosato had two, where you're like, is he, his talent is there, but it's just like showing that, yes, he also now has a Yusho. So it's like, yes, he can kind of hang with the rest, or kind of validates it more, I think.
I love that. I think you're using the correct terminology there, saying that it validates. Like, he already deserved it, and he already had it. So it doesn't matter if we thought he deserved it or not. He was already an Ozeki. And really, if we go back and look at past performances, I'll pull them up as we're talking here, but, like, he did deserve it. The big blip was the 8 and 7 in September, but even before ththese last two bashos, 10 and 5, 11 and 4, 10 and 5, 13 and 2. Again, that was January, when he got so close. Before that, 11 and 4, like, his last 12 months, his last calendar year, he'd never finished under double digits. And even within that never under double digits, only 2 of those had been 10-win tournaments. He's doing better than that most times. And you can go even further back than that if you really want to look at him, as long as we're willing to throw out some injury-damaged performances where he actually technically had a losing record, but didn't, you know what I mean, with the those days that go technically in the loss column, but you actually had to go back to November of 2021 to find the last time that he actually had a losing record. So as far as proven commitment of dominance to the sport, Kotozakura was obviously there. So like you said, validation is a great term, that this 14-1 Makuuchi Division Championship, first of his career, hopefully first of many, is sort of this stamp to validate or approve of what we already knew. It's like, no, he is one of the greatest in this era that we saw a little bit of chaos, but now perhaps we're moving into a different era. Because, like you mentioned, the race with Hoshoryu, so exciting. Especially those day 14 matches after Kotozakura got his win, and to see Hoshoryu go in there and just be like, nah, I'm going to do it too. There's no way I'm missing out on this. This race was awesome. I think in sumo we have these sort of oscillating eras of a dominant Yokozuna or dueling Yokozunas or Ozekis, whatever it ends up being, depending historically what you're looking at. So I'm super curious, how did you feel about this race? What did this do for your sumo viewing experience?
I was excited. It did definitely kind of amp up, like, when they really saved this to the, the very last day. It was interesting when you look at it, you're like, oh, Hoshoryu previously had lost to Abi. You're like, yeah, Abi the Dream Crusher. That makes sense. But Kotozakura losing to Oho, who then went and lost to every single one of the Ozeki, and I think he beat Kirishima too.
Broke my heart. We'll touch on Oho later, but broke my heart. But I still got high hopes for that guy. Anyway, sorry.
But otherwise lost to every one of the Sanyaku, and you're like, well, that's weird.
Yeah, I get you. But for real, like the race, like you're saying, this was more exciting. It's, if we want to talk about baseball in the U.S., the Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire race against each other for the home run record back in was that the late 90s or early 2000s? It doesn't matter. But like that was more exciting than Barry Bonds by himself chasing the numbers they set, right? Like, to me, anyway. I don't know. Some people want to just see that greatness, that pure dominant performance like we had with Hakuoho, like we had with Terunofuji's 2021. But we've been in a little bit of this era of chaos as after 2021, Teru couldn't stay healthy. So seeing this race is a kind of different type of sports that personally I find more exciting.
No, same for me too. Like I like, especially because they're so different in style and size and everything essentially, that it's kind of a nice contrast.
I like that. Yeah, that's a super interesting way to look at it. And beyond that, I will say our buddy Phil actually pointed out that now there are articles coming out saying the Yokozuna Council has named both these guys as contenders to get promoted to Yokozuna in January. I believe the justification for that is that technically Hoshoryu, this is considered like a Junyusho equivalent performance, right? Losing to a fellow Ozeki, being in contention that whole time. And I think that's fair. I do understand that there might be some hostility to that concept because these guys, it just looks like a softer era, but I don't think we believe that that's real. If you watched this actual Yusho, if you saw the guys on the dohyo, this is not about being soft contenders. These guys, it's about fighting a guy of equal strength when both of you are on top of the mountain, in my opinion. How do you feel about these two both being Yokozuna promotion candidates next basho?
God, I'm really torn on it, to be honest with you. Like, They both clearly showed this time that they can do super well. They don't have the highest scores. Like, I'm probably a bit skewed to Takakesho when he was healthy and he was getting like 13 every time.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a lot of like 10 and 5s with these two. So we'll see. But I also think next time it's going to be wildly difficult because that means because Onosato isn't going to be at a disadvantage, which we kind of talked about ahead of time, where it's always really tough on your first Ozeki basho. Kind of fell through with that we expected. So they're going to have to compete with him back and Terunofuji back, which if he's healthy, neither of them have ever beaten him.
That's a good point, because that's an interesting question, right? So with this whole concept of them both being Yokozuna contenders, the question is, does Teru try to race back? I guess for me, the question is just going back to two recent Mongolian Yokozunas, just because they're interesting case studies, right? Does Teru not care? Since he got 10, will he just fade off into the sunset if one of these guys gets Yokozuna? Like, is it the JSA just keeping him around so that they can say they have a Yokozuna? Or, like, the Kakuryu path, just go away? Or does he want the Hakuoho path of, no, I want to leave on a win? Now, technically, he would be leaving on a win. It's just that he'd be living on a win where he also was technically there but sat out several basho. I don't know. I'm curious about that, but I'm with you that would be very interesting to see. Do we have this moment of moving on where they challenge the existing Yokozuna one last time? Or, my personal opinion, I think we already had that in the previous bashos. I think that's why it was a big deal that Kotozakura finally got a win over Terunofuji. And also, I mean, like, I don't know who I even put in front of the race, because there's some other contenders we need to talk about, including Onosato, who, yes, one blip of a tournament, it was 9-6. No, you do not want an Ozeki getting 9 wins. You want them getting 11, usually. And preferably you want them contending for the Yusho. But no idiot would make the case that now Onosato is out of the Yokozuna race. It just might be that maybe he's currently passed in this running with, obviously these two guys being named as contenders, but Kotozakura coming off the win. That kind of recency bias is just always going to be valid. But you do bring up an interesting point with Takakesho not getting it. So, okay, set Onosato aside for a second, because if we're going to use this line of logic of needing to get a Yusho, then he's out for now, just for right now, right? Like, if Hoshoryu... let's reverse this basho exactly. Next basho, Hoshoryu goes 14-1, and it's Kotozakura who gets the Jun Yusho. Do you want a double promotion? Do you want only Hoshoryu to get promoted? Do you want no promotions because technically nobody's gotten back-to-back Yushos? How do you personally feel?
I do need to make one correction. I forgot Kotozakura did beat Terunofuji in the last tournament he was here, so minor correction.
No, yeah, but yeah.
I personally don't feel the need to rush into a Yokozuna. Like, I feel like Terunofuji isn't in a rush to leave necessarily. JSA wants to have a Yokozuna, so they're keeping him there. Everybody's kind of good for now. If, they go through next time, say that scenario happens, I'd be fine with both of them staying at Ozeki. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that personally.
Interesting. So then you would have effectively the big showdown be March, at which point I think we're more likely to actually see a reasonably healthy Teru if he's going to come back at all. That'd be a bananas March if that scenario happened. 14-1 Hoshoryu with the Yusho, 13-2 Kotozakura with the runner-up from the last day. Both those guys are still going to be in Yokozuna contention for March, but then Teru comes back as well. That would just be an insane tournament. Curious down in the comments if you guys have thoughts as well. Like, what do you think of that specific? It's a really niche scenario. The idea that specific scenario happens is almost zero, but it's not impossible, right? What do you guys think if we got that Hoshoryu winning the Yusho so they split him? Because I think, Nick, you and I would both agree, if Kotozakura wins in March, hands down has to be a Yokozuna, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's not a question. That's back-to-back title as an Ozeki. But what's interesting to me, and where I give credence to the opinion you just laid out for us, is this idea that nobody, Onosato, Hoshoryu, and Kotozakura, right now, after the November 2024 Basho, nobody's doing what Teru did in 2021 to get Yokozuna. No one's close to that.
No.
And so I think that's kind of the big thing. We'll touch on it just briefly here, but how do you feel about Onosato within the Yokozuna race there, if we're going to call them 3 contenders for this new era instead of perhaps 2?
I think there's a real chance that he's going to be a disruptor for one of the 2 next time.
Gotcha. You think, and
for sure,
you already mentioned it, you think this was a blip of new promotion?
Yeah, 100%. I think with his track record, he could easily topple. He's going to crush somebody's chance, I think, next time. I don't know one for sure. I would lean... Well, honestly, I don't know. I don't know that I can say who I would think.
Yeah, which is kind of exciting, right? To go into sports and we don't know who the main contender is going to be. And like, because anyone can have a good basho, but it's a question of how do they string that together? And I think this basho, more than a lot of them in recent memory, proved that to me. So
yeah, and I think if they can, if one of them can keep Onosato down and potentially beat Terunofuji, 100%, like nobody's going to question like a Yokozuna promotion. Like that would just be obvious. But if you can't do those things, then, it's kind of the closest you're going to get, since with Terunofuji injured to his ascension when he had to fight, he had to fight a Yokozuna for it.
Yeah. That's the big thing, is stylistically and narratively, I think we all would like someone to knock off the Yokozuna to get it. Or in Teru's case, he didn't actually do it, but there were 2, a future Yokozuna and a current Yokozuna fighting at 14-0 on the last day. Losing to Hakuoho in that circumstance, obviously Teru still deserved the promotion, but that gives credence to this idea that even with Hoshoryu still being a contender, like Teru didn't get that last Yusho either and still got Yokozuna, and we all still think deserved it. But maybe, like you're saying, this is about the prior credentials, although those monster stat numbers from Kotozakura, man.
Yes, there's a lot there. It's kind of, I guess it's going to depend on how desperate is the JSA to have somebody replace Terunofuji.
Right, and what does Terunofuji actually think? Like, frankly, how are his pancreas and his kidneys doing? Because the man is at this point actually suffering from very serious diseases, this kidney health, like, that could threaten his life. So, I
personally would bet that. Same. I bet at this point he's probably fine. He got his ultimate goal. Like, he's going to go down in the records, and there's nothing wrong with walking away right now. But I think it's more of like his kind of loyalty to the sport that's kind of even held him on this long.
Yeah, because he is sort of the good soldier for the JSA in many ways. Almost a redemption story for the JSA's relationship with Mongolian Yokozunas. Not that Kakuryu also wasn't, but the idea that like nobody's pretending that they liked Asashoryu, nobody's pretending that they liked Hakuoho, So,
Yep, exactly.
yeah. But it's not just about Yokozuna races. This basho was extremely exciting, and we had a ton of Rikishi who had these really good performances. Like, and I generally consider, like, double-digit wins. If you had double-digit wins, that usually makes me raise my eyebrows as being something really good. Who do you think was sort of the biggest winner from this basho? Again, setting aside these Sanyaku Yusho contenders, including Onosato, because I think both of us think that he's still we don't need to talk about that. Everybody knows he's great and he's going to be great. But of some of these contenders, because I have a couple that I want to toss at you, Wakatakakage and Takerufuji, both guys who we thought were outside contenders to win this Yusho. Neither got it done and both massively slipped off. But for a rank and file Maegashira, they both had awesome tournaments. Who between those two do you think is a bigger winner coming out of this basho, and who's the bigger loser?
Honestly, I think, God, it's tough. It's really tough for me to say. Like, obviously, I want to say Wakatakakage because he, fought at a higher level, so he did have to fight some harder people.
Mm-hmm.
But he also, I don't know, it's because most of the Sanyaku that he fought did terrible this time.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe they were kind of off their game. But I think purely from that perspective, I'd have to give it to Wakatakakage. But also, it's like, do you expect that more from him because of his previous rank? I think I'd go with him versus Takerufuji, who I think lost a couple of matches that he absolutely should not have.
That's my thing. I don't even think it's that close. Here's me being bombastic and controversial or whatever, but I had such high hopes for Takerufuji. And this is what's crazy, right? You can't say that a 10-win tournament is a disappointment. It's just not. It's not. It's an awesome basho, okay? But Takerufuji, my massive concern is that he will be Ryogoku, right? So Ryogoku is the wrestler from the Taisho era, so 100 plus years ago, whose record Takerufuji broke by winning that Yusho when he first came up. I'm worried because in winning that Yusho, Takerufuji suffered that injury and then kind of fought through it. He took some time to heal up, but also fought on it. I don't know. I'm fearful that he will be like Ryogoku and that Yusho will be his only Yusho. I'm probably dumb for saying that because the sample size is microscopic. We've seen 4 Sekitori bashos from Takerufuji, but I'm with you. He lost to Toki Hayate. He lost to Shona Naomi. Those are not the losses you should be taking. And then when we look at his wins, yes, he knocked off a really hot Onokatsu, but it really was not as impressive as I wanted. So hopefully he gets his feet under him and starts to rise back up. But I'm way more impressed with 10-5 from Wakatakakage up at the top than 10-5 with a couple of bad losses, in my opinion, for Takerufuji down at the bottom. How about some of the other rank and filers, though? So, like, Takanosho was at 10-1 and in the running for this Yusho yet again, just like a couple bashos ago. He fell off, but so does that make him a loser or a winner? Gonoyama finally recovered and had double-digit wins, but he had to dip down into the mid-Maegashiras to do it. Is he a winner or loser? Is he actually going to do it when he gets back up to Maegashira 1? Chiyoshima finally comes back and is healthy and sticks, but that's a guy who we've never seen big things from. Or Abi, your ultimate giant slayer. Who do you think out of sort of those other remaining double-digit win guys, who's your biggest winner?
Honestly, so I love Abi and I think he's great, but it's not something I don't expect from him versus I lean towards Takanosho because it's just not the performance you've seen and it was really solid this time.
Yeah. I like it. I mean, that's fair enough. Like Abi, we've talked about before, Abi is a Sekiwake. Anytime Abi is not ranked at Sekiwake, like buy all the Abi stock you can because it means he's fighting under his appropriate rank. He can beat all sorts of people. Maybe one day he makes Ozeki. I don't know, but especially
Probably
at this point in his life.
Even as his biggest fan, I know.
Exactly. And Takanosho's another guy who 5 years ago very much was an Ozeki contender, but he's just not at that point in his career anymore. I think Takanosho is right now where Takayasu was 2 years ago, probably when he was coming runner-up. Like maybe if he gets a Yusho, that's the surprise, but he's never going to reclaim that Ozeki status or even the Sekiwake status. I don't really see that from Takanosho. I actually, of that crop of guys, I picked Gonoyama because I've been waiting for him to drop low enough to get his head straight again, get some clinical victories. I think that 11 wins from him in this basho was incredibly impressive. I hope it got his head straight. I hope it reminded him that he can beat these guys. I am worried, though, he still was very one-dimensional. But, like we've talked about, Abi traditionally has been one-dimensional. And that bro can make a run for it and win a Yusho. So I'm hoping that the prize student of Goeido, Gonoyama, really turns this into something and pushes on going forward. And once he gets back into that joy, actually makes a run for Komusubi.
Yeah, and probably because I'm an Abi fan, I don't care if if a wrestler is one-dimensional. You just have to be really, really good at it. Like, you just have to be the best.
Yep. Agreed. We've talked about it time and time again. We both love Ichi Yamamoto, but it's the difference between Abi and Ichi Yamamoto. Ichi Yamamoto is great at his one dimension. Abi is elite at the same one dimension. It's a different story.
Yeah, where you know what's coming, but you can't, even knowing it and having experience with it, you still can't fight it off always.
Totally.
And that's the difference.
Yes, totally agreed. How about biggest basho losers? So some guys, well, here's the thing. I'm gonna pull the rug out from under you and give mine first, but Kirishima, the Hiradoumi Shodai sort of confluence, right, of which of those guys, or Oho as well, that mix for who deserved to be Komusubi in this basho and things like that. But also there's some newcomers who could be some disappointment candidates. Asakoryu won a lot of fans, I think. I think people miss Ishiura more than they realized. And so Asakoryu is I don't know if he can be as good as Ishiura was, but is attempting to be that second coming of the little muscle man. Or Shishi, obviously the big Ukrainian, as we've seen our European Rikishi drop away from the sport in recent months. Sort of this next hope, him and Aonishiki obviously still working his way up, 10-5 in Juryo, so Aonishiki will make it there too, but those guys dropping back down. But hands down for me, Kirishima is the biggest loser of this basho. I'm not calling him a loser, I mean, he had the most to gain, and that has reversed to just 6-9. And he just came off that big one. And I think he just blew his best chance to rebuild his Ozeki return campaign. I'm very scared. Now, he's younger and has less injury history, but I'm worried that he is dangerously close to entering the Takayasu Takanosho category of guys who still have this elite skill, but never quite recapture what needs to be recaptured to make that final Ozeki push again.
Oh, I could 100% see it at this point. Like you said, like, and there's the pressure of he'd be the first Mongolian to hit Ozeki and not hit Yokozuna in a very long time.
Ugh.
Which I think is just an additional like outside pressure. I personally, I was very, very disappointed in that one, but I wasn't surprised. Nobody's surprised that Shodai did terrible. I think I was the most bummed though for Hiradoumi because he had literally just gotten up there, like just flew like right in the sun, and then he's tanking.
And 4-11.
Yeah, it was bad. And it's going to take a long time for him to get back up.
Right. I think he can do it, right? But like what's frustrating is after how good his Komusubi debut was, barely 7-8 on that second one, so then drops down a little bit, but then like this bloop, I'm like, wait, what is this? Are you hurt? What's happening?
And it's hard to know because like somebody's always hurt, but like, man, it was bad. It was just bad.
I know.
He came around the last 3 days, but that doesn't make any difference when you'd only won one right to that.
All we can say is that we hope those last few days are a harbinger for what's going to happen next basho, especially maybe he'll get the Gonoyama treatment, right? Go fight mid-Maegashires and get healthy, because you should be better than them. But for me, that 4-11 was such a worrying red mark of like, I don't know if your body's up to snuff. What happened?
Yep. And it's like, I hope you can get back up there. It's like, it'd be a bummer for him. Like, it was exciting to see him up at Komusubi, and I don't want him to like drop down to like 8 and then stay there forever.
Yeah. Right. We don't want to see him frankly, we don't want to see him doing the Nishiki Fuji train.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll see. How about some new blood, old blood? Juryo promotions, there's just a couple that I wanted to talk about here. Kinbozan came out mad and looked awesome. Ultimately, he kind of cooled off, finished 12-5, 12-3, which is a really good record, but didn't smash, didn't Zensho Yusho, didn't 14-1, 13-2, and things like that. But he looked really angry down there, looked like he really doesn't think he deserves to be in Juryo and wants to be back in Makuuchi. I'm super stoked for that. And then Hakuoho actually got 10-5. He turned it on the second half, and so he is going to be coming back as well. I don't think Hakuoho is the Hakuoho we last saw in Makuuchi. I hope I'm wrong, but I was actually surprised he made it to double digits this basho. Do you have any high hopes for either of those guys coming back up?
Honestly, no.
Okay, all right.
Like Kimbozan did fine in Makuuchi, but he never even really did he get to the Sanyaku or even close? I think he kind of peter out right around 6-4, somewhere around there.
He petered out significantly before that. Yeah, you are correct.
In Hakuoho, I think it's the same thing where it's not like a Takerufuji where you're like, oh, what's going to happen when he comes back? You're like, he'll go up there and I'm sure he'll do fine. But like I have lower expectations, I think, than I did for Takerufuji.
Right. And for me, Hakuoho is the bigger frustration of that. So like for the record, Kimbozan's highest ever rank is Maegashira 5. Hakuoho's is Maegashira 9. So like, these guys did very well in Juryo, but they had these massive expectations when they came up the first time. And personally, I still hold hope on some of those. But with Kimbozan, at least from his coach's perspective, the question is work ethic. From Hakuoho, I think it's health. I don't know that his shoulder ever healed 100%. Right. Yeah. So I just don't know. I think those guys might end up being mid Maegashiras. I hope they prove me wrong. When they came up the first time, I had every hope that both of them were Ozeki grade guys. I thought that I don't know that I thought, Hakuoho, I probably thought Yokozuna possibilities. But now at this point, I'm worried and I'll be stoked if they make Sekiwake runs. And then I hope that we can go beyond that, I think.
One thing I am excited for is, you kind of touched on a little bit, Nishikifuji. He's pretty sure he's just going to barely stay in Makuuchi again.
Oh, he's just riding the train, baby. He's just cashing them checks.
Close. Like, even if you put up those top 4, who I think you could easily put them up there, he still just barely hangs on to Megashira. Probably 17?
Correct. I think he will be literally the lowest ranked Rikishi in the upcoming basho, but I think there's no way at 6 and 9 from Maegashira 14, there's no way that they dump him. So our boy continues the gravy train.
We can at least hang on, and maybe one day he'll finally prove our initial predictions correct.
I hope so. I don't know with him if it's health too. He also suffered some injuries, and I don't know if he ever recovered, but we'll see.
His body's like a third tape at this point.
Yeah, but that does make me wonder. So if we're looking towards the future, we've just wrapped up a Honbasho. I really love how this one ended. There were some great stories this year, up and down. I want to know, what was the biggest story of the 2024 Honbasho to you, Nick?
Honestly, I think the obvious one is Onosato.
Yep.
His rise up this year was bananas.
I don't think there can be any other. I mean, we've seen some awesome storylines. Teru getting those Yushos getting to 10. That's huge and historic. This super exciting potential of Kotozakura and Hoshoryu is awesome. But what Onosato did, how can you pick against that as the story of the year?
Unless you're looking for a bummer story, then you can look at Kirishima.
Oh, no. Oh, my God. You're so right. Oh, where he was at the end of 2023 versus what happened in 2024. Oh, you have made... That is the biggest contender for... Okay.
It's the contender, and it's not the one you want.
No, it isn't. We want positivity. Get that out of your brain. It's the Onosato story. But if you're listening, let me know, what was the biggest story of the year for you, even if it has to be the bummer story? Or do you guys have anything else? Is it really just those two stories, Onosato and Kirishima, as kind of the story of 2024, or what other contenders do you guys have? How about, though, moving forward? So now we're entering the 2025 Honbasho. We've talked about potential for new Yokozunas. We've talked about potential for the current Yokozuna to step away. What is your big prediction, your big swing for what is going to be the story of the 2025 Honbasho?
That's a good... The rise of the Waka brothers potentially getting to Sekiwake.
Oh, you think Sekiwake, though? You don't think... Because I think for this to be a true, like, Nick's making picks prediction, you'd have to pick those boys as Ozekis.
Ooh, no. I don't think either of them are going to get there, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not this year.
They need and they're... and less likely next year, they're going to be another year older, like Wakamotoharu is 32, 33? 32.
I honestly would lean personally more towards Wakamotoharu. I think he's consistent. He's done better at this high rank than his brother did the first time.
And I think he's stayed healthier. That's the big thing for me, is there's always this scare factor in the closet for me of, is Wakatakakage's knee going to hold up?
Yes. Yeah, we don't want him to get up there and just start squeaking out 8 and 7s again as soon as right away. Hopefully it's better this time.
So you think your story of the year is going to be two Waka brothers go to the top of the Sanyaku and I guess play spoiler all year, that they're in contention all the time but don't necessarily get it done? Because if they get it done, they might be Ozekis.
Yes.
Okay.
100%. I mean, there's like, oh, is there going to be a new Yokozuna, or is January the big story going to crush them for the entire year? Is that all of them kind of fail at it?
Yeah. Well, my pick for the story of the year for 2025 is going to be the rise of Aonishiki. We had Onosato this year. Let's see Aonishiki. I'm probably with you. I gave you a hard time for talking about Sekiwakes of the Waka brothers. I don't know that Aonishiki has Ozeki in his future, but I think this could be the next guy, this young Ukrainian. He can storm up, and I think he can, by the end of the year, make a run for Sanyaku. That's the big story that I think is going to be exciting, is this continued rise of our Ukrainian dynamo.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Just something fun to mix everything up. Kind of like Onosato did, honestly.
Oh, dude, he shook all sorts of things up and has been nothing but good for the sport, in my opinion, and that's including the scandal that happened. Obviously, I think we talked about that when it happened. You grow through that or whatever, but that's another reason why he was the story of the year. The ups and the downs, but still this upward trajectory. I'm hoping that we can get a similar kind of story out of Aonishiki moving forward, but regardless, 2024, spectacular home basho. Can't wait to see what we come up with in 2025. Thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you again soon.